25 years ago, Girlfriends changed TV forever. For women, unforgettable friendships, and a cast that defined an era. Today, we're looking back at the stars who brought the show to life, and how they've evolved in 2025. From glow-ups to life journeys, this is Girlfriends Cast. Then and now. Let's dive in. 1. Tracee Ellis Ross stepped into the world of Girlfriends in 2000 with a light that was both gentle and commanding, a kind of energy that made Joan Clayton unforgettable. Back then, she was still rising, still carving out her own identity in Hollywood despite coming from a legendary family. Her presence on screen felt warm and familiar, like someone you could laugh with, cry with, or call when life got confusing. She had that mix of vulnerability and quiet ambition, a woman figuring it out in real time, and people saw themselves in her. Her curls, her fashion, her slightly awkward charm. Everything about her in those early years felt authentic, almost like each scene was a window into a friend's life rather than a character in a sitcom. As the show grew, Tracee grew with it, becoming a voice for Black women navigating friendships, careers, heartbreak, and the messy parts of adulthood. Outside the series, she blossomed with a confidence that felt earned. She wasn't just Diana Ross's daughter. She was Tracee Ellis Ross, bold, funny, whip-smart, and unafraid to speak her truth. Those early 2000s interviews show a woman who was learning her strength as she went, laughing loudly and embracing her quirks. Her sense of style evolved too, shifting from playful Y2K looks to the beginnings of the fashion icon she would later become. Fast forward to 2025, and Tracee carries herself with a kind of effortless grace that comes from knowing exactly who she is. She's in her 50s now, but there's a youthful vibrance in her spirit, the kind that doesn't fade with time. Her career tells a story of someone who kept showing up for herself. Asterisk, blackish, asterisk, the high note, her beauty brand pattern, her activism, her voice. She speaks with more intention now, more softness, but also more power. There's a calm confidence in the way she stands, the way she smiles, the way she chooses her projects. She feels like a woman who has lived, learned, and bloomed in her own timing. 2. Golden Brooks entered Girlfriends in 2000 with fire that was impossible to ignore. As Maya Wilkes, she carried this irresistible blend of sass, vulnerability, humor, and raw honesty that made her one of the most relatable characters on the show. In those early years, Golden had this bright, expressive energy. Her face told a story even before her words landed. She embodied the working-class Black woman who loved fiercely, fought hard, and struggled openly. There was grit in her laughter and truth in her tears, and viewers connected to her because she felt real. Behind the scenes, Golden herself was still navigating Hollywood, still pushing through barriers, still proving that she wasn't just another actress, but someone with a deeply emotional core that shaped every role she touched. Through the run of Girlfriends, Golden grew in her craft, learning to balance comedy with incredibly tender moments. Maya's journey mirrored her own evolution, a young mother, a dreamer, someone discovering her worth in a world that didn't always make space for her. Golden carried those storylines with surprising depth, giving Maya layers that audiences didn't expect from a sitcom character. Those early 2000s interviews show a woman who was hungry, focused, and quietly determined, refining her voice both as an artist and as a storyteller. And off-screen, her own personal style and confidence began to blossom. She shifted from playful early 2000s charm into a woman who knew how to command a room effortlessly. In 2025, Golden Brooks stands as a woman who has weathered storms and come out with a softer, stronger glow. She's in her 50s now, but there's a renewed radiance in her, one shaped by motherhood, life lessons, and years of carving her own lane in an industry that can be both unpredictable and unforgiving. She still works, still creates, still surprises audiences with roles that remind you of her range. Her presence today feels calmer, more grounded, the kind of confidence that comes from surviving Hollywood long after the hype dies down. There's elegance in the way she moves, a quiet fire in the way she speaks, and a wisdom that feels lived in rather than taught. 3. Jill Marie Jones burst into Girlfriends in 2000 with the kind of presence that could shift a room the moment she walked in. As Tony Childs, she embodied elegance wrapped in attitude, charm sharpened with ambition, and vulnerability hidden beneath layers of confidence and luxury. In those early years, There was a glow about her, youthful, fierce, and magnetic. She played Tony with such conviction that even her flaws felt human, relatable, and often painfully honest. Behind the role, Jill was a rising actress still finding her rhythm in Hollywood, still discovering what her voice sounded like outside the scripts. But there was something unmistakable about her. She knew she was born for the spotlight. Her interviews from that era show a woman excited, hungry, and unafraid to take risks, smiling with the kind of unfiltered joy that comes from being right at the beginning of a dream. Her years on Girlfriend shaped not only her career, but also the connection viewers had with her. The way she delivered humor with a raised eyebrow or heartbreak with a trembling voice made Tony Childs complicated in the best way. Jill carried that character with a delicate balance of glamour and emotional depth, turning her into one of the most iconic black sitcom characters of the early 2000s. Leaving the show was a turning point, professionally bold and emotionally heavy, but it revealed a woman determined to explore her range beyond the comfort of a hit series. Her post-**Girlfriend's* era was filled with experimentation, from supernatural series to indie films, each project showing a new facet of her artistry. By 2025, Jill Marie Jones has evolved into a woman who seems beautifully self-assured, someone who has learned the art of choosing herself without apology. She still acts, still surprises audiences, still carries that striking beauty that hasn't dimmed with time. But now there's a maturity in her presence, a quieter confidence, a softer grace. Life has given her depth, patience, and a kind of womanly calm that didn't exist in her 20s. She speaks like someone who has lived fully, loved deeply, and healed intentionally. Her social presence radiates freedom, a woman unboxed by Hollywood's demands, comfortable in her skin, moving at her own pace. For Persia White stepped into Girlfriends in 2000 like a quiet storm, soft, artistic, unpredictable, and deeply soulful. As Lynn Searcy, she carried an energy that felt different from everyone else on the show. Lynn was free-spirited, brilliant yet scattered, spiritual yet chaotic, and Persia wore that character like a second skin. In those early years, she had an earthy beauty and an almost mysterious aura, the kind of presence that made you lean closer just to understand her. Persia wasn't loud in her delivery. She was intentional, layered, and emotionally textured. Many didn't realize that behind Lynn's quirky brilliance was an actress who shared a real-life love for music, poetry, activism, and emotional depth. She was discovering herself as she acted, and that journey flowed naturally onto the screen. As the seasons went on, Persia became the grounding energy of the show. While the others were defined by careers, relationships, or ambition, Lynn represented the soul, creative, searching, unafraid to question society's boxes. Persia brought a raw sincerity to the role, making Lynn's vulnerabilities feel authentic rather than comedic. Off-screen, she was navigating her own evolution, exploring music more deeply, using her voice for vegan activism, animal rights, and causes many actors at the time were hesitant to touch publicly. Those early 2000s glimpses of her reveal a woman who lived intentionally, even when life was messy. You could sense she was someone who felt deeply and cared fiercely about both art and humanity. Fast forward to 2025, and Persia White carries a beauty that feels timeless, not rooted in youth, but in wisdom, serenity, and a life lived with open hands. In her 50s now, she radiates a grounded warmth, the kind that only comes from years of inner work and soulful living. She has grown not only as an actress, but also as a musician and activist. Her life with her husband, actor Joseph Morgan, has brought a kind of quiet joy into her world, a balance she seems to wear effortlessly. Professionally, she still takes roles that align with her heart, still sings, still speaks out for causes that matter. Her evolution shows a woman who didn't chase Hollywood's noise. She followed her own rhythm. 5 Reggie Hayes entered Girlfriends in 2000 with a quiet charm that made William Dent one of the most unforgettable characters on television. In those early years, he carried a kind of gentle awkwardness, smart, lovable, slightly goofy, and deeply loyal, that made him the emotional balance of the group. While the ladies brought fire, drama, and intensity, Reggie brought warmth and sincerity. Behind the character was an actor still finding a space in Hollywood, navigating an industry that often overlooked subtle brilliance in favor of flash. Yet even then, There was something unmistakably genuine about him. His expressions, his timing, his softness. Everything about a performance added a layer of humanity to the show. When he smiled, it felt honest. When he hurt, viewers felt it too. As Girlfriends grew, Reggie became the heart of the ensemble. His portrayal of William wasn't just comedic relief. It was layered with vulnerability and a kind of quiet resilience. He played a man torn between career ambitions and emotional needs, between masculine expectations and the reality of being sensitive in a world that didn't always reward it. Reggie gave the role a depth that often went unnoticed, but was there every pause, every nervous laugh, every moment of tenderness. Off-screen, he was humble, private, and soft-spoken, someone who loved acting but struggled with the unpredictable nature of Hollywood after the show ended. Those post-** Girlfriends * years weren't easy, and you can see the way reality in his interviews, the challenges, the slow seasons, the moments of doubt. But he carried himself with dignity, never losing his gentle spirit. By 2025, Reggie Hayes' story feels like that of a survivor, someone who has walked through shadows but still manages to hold light in his eyes. Time has changed him, softened some edges, deepened others, and given him a quiet wisdom that wasn't there in 2000. He still acts, still lends his voice to projects that resonate with him, still carries the calm, thoughtful presence that made audiences love him. There's a maturity in his posture now, a sense of reflection, like a man who has lived, endured, and learned to breathe again. He looks healthier, more grounded, and at peace with the chapters that shaped him. Hollywood didn't always give him the roles he deserved, but life gave him perspective, gratitude, and a kind of emotional strength that only experience can build. 6. Khalil Kain entered Girlfriends in the early 2000s carrying a kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself. It simply existed. When he stepped into the role of Darnell Wilkes, Maya's husband, he brought a grounded masculinity that balanced the chaos and humor of the show. In those days, he had the look of a man who had lived just enough to understand struggle, pride, and responsibility. He played Darnell with a quiet intensity, a man working hard to keep his family together, to provide, to hold on to his dignity in a world that kept testing him. Behind the character was an actor with a strong creative background, someone who had come from the raw, impactful world of Juice, and was now showing a softer, more mature side. In the early 2000s, Khalil carried youth with a certain sharpness, sharp jawline, sharp focus, sharp emotional range, and audiences felt that authenticity. During his time on Girlfriends, Kain gave Darnell a depth that elevated the role beyond a simple supportive character. He made you feel the weight of a working man's pride, the fear of losing his family, the tenderness buried beneath frustration, and a love that never quite left, even when life bent him. He had a way of acting with his eyes, those quiet moments when Darnell felt hurt or betrayed or hopeful felt painfully real. Off-screen, Khalil was quietly crafting a steady career, navigating Hollywood without the flash of celebrity culture. He wasn't everywhere. He was intentional, choosing roles that aligned with his sense of truth. There was a seriousness about him even then, a man who understood his craft, who didn't get lost in the noise, who carried discipline like a second skin. Fast forward to 2025, and Khalil Kain has evolved into a man who wears age with strength and grace. In his 50s now, he has shed the softness of youth and stepped fully into a regal maturity. His features have sharpened even more, but his energy has softened in the best way. More reflective, more grounded, more at peace with who he is. He has spoken openly in recent years about his passion for theater, storytelling, and the quieter, more meaningful parts of the creative world. He still acts, still surprises audiences with roles that remind you he's more than a television husband. He's an artist with depth, discipline, and an almost philosophical calm. His presence today feels fuller, like a man who has lived deeply and learned how to turn that into art. 7. Flex Alexander stepped into Girlfriends in 2000 with a confident, effortless cool that made the original Darnell Wilkes instantly magnetic. Even though his run on the show was brief, there was something unforgettable about his presence. Smooth, grounded, naturally funny, and quietly commanding. In those early years, Flex carried himself with the energy of a rising star who knew he had something special to offer. He had already danced professionally, already hustled through comedy clubs, already paid some dues, and by the time he appeared on Girlfriends, that blend of discipline and charisma showed. He had the lanky elegance of a dancer, the comedic timing of a seasoned performer, and the heart of someone who understood the weight and warmth of playing a husband and father. His version of Darnell had a boyish charm and a steady kind of love that made viewers instantly care. After leaving Girlfriends, Flex Alexander stepped into a new chapter that would define him for many viewers. One-on-One. As Flex Washington, he brought humor, swagger, and a father-daughter tenderness that shaped a whole generation of sitcom fans. Those early to mid-2000s years show him glow with that unbeatable black sitcom-era energy. Bright, athletic, sharply dressed, always ready with joke, but capable of surprising emotional depth. He wasn't just performing, he was thriving. He became a household name with a smile that felt real and a presence that made him approachable. Behind the scenes, he was a man navigating Hollywood with determination, balancing ambition with family life, hustling for roles while building a legacy that would last longer than any single show. By 2025, Flex Alexander has grown into a man whose maturity feels steady and earned. He's in his 50s now, carrying the calm confidence of someone who has lived many lives. Comedian, actor, father, survivor challenges he once opened up about publicly, including financial struggles and health scares within his family. Time has given him depth, broadened his perspective, and softened him in meaningful ways. His appearance today shows a man who has transitioned from the playful energy of his youth into a quiet strength. Someone who doesn't need to prove anything anymore. He still works, still inspires, still uses his platform to uplift others, and still carries himself with kindness first. 8. Jason Pace's time on Girlfriends may not have carried the constant visibility of the core cast, but the presence he brought in the early 2000s added a subtle, grounding energy to the world of the show. Back then, he had the look of a young actor carving out his space. Clean-cut, sharp-featured, with a boyish seriousness that made his characters believable. There was something steady about him, the kind of actor who didn't have to push too hard to make a moment feel real. In those early years, you could sense the hunger beneath the surface, the quiet determination of a man working through the unpredictability of Hollywood, taking each role as a stepping stone, shaping himself slowly and steadily. He carried a gentle charm, the kind that didn't shout for attention but was felt the moment he entered a scene. As the series unfolded, Jason brought depth to the dynamics around him, lending emotional texture to the episodes he appeared in. He had a way of portraying sincerity without overacting, allowing small gestures and quiet expressions to do the storytelling. That subtlety became part of his signature. Off-screen, he was still navigating the industry, exploring acting while balancing life behind the camera, occasionally stepping into production spaces, and finding a rhythm that suited the kind of artist he wanted to be. Those early 2000 snapshots of him reflect a man both ambitious and grounded, someone who understood that success didn't always come loudly. It sometimes came through consistency, patience, and presence. By 2025, Jason Pace carries a more seasoned air, the kind that comes from years of experience both inside and outside the entertainment space. He's older now, but in a way that feels enriched rather than aged. His face tells stories, subtle lines from laughter, deeper ones from life's heavier seasons. He continues to work, but at a pace that feels intentional. He seems more selective, more attuned to projects that resonate rather than simply keep him busy. Time has given him refinement, a calmer voice, a steadier gaze, a maturity that radiates from within. He feels like someone who has learned to breathe deeply, to move through life without the pressure to outperform the past, choosing meaning over noise. 9. Charles Divin stepped into Girlfriends with the quiet elegance of an actor who didn't need to dominate a room to make an impression. In the early 2000s, he had that striking mix of model-perfect features and a gentle, thoughtful presence. Smooth voice, calm demeanor, the kind of charm that didn't feel forced. When he appeared on the show, he brought a cool steadiness that blended effortlessly with the emotional swirl of the core characters. In those years, Charles was still blossoming professionally, moving between acting, modeling, and hosting with the versatility of someone who understood that success in Hollywood often required wearing many hats. There was a certain brightness in his early interviews, a young man who was enjoying each opportunity, still shaping his identity, still discovering where he wanted to rest his feet creatively. As the decade moved on, Charles Divins became known not only for his on-screen presence, but also for professionalism and balance he carried behind the scenes. He had a way of delivering his roles with quiet precision, bringing realism instead of exaggeration, depth instead of noise. He didn't chase fame loudly. He built a career with the calm patience of someone who trusted his journey. His work as a host, especially on Extra, revealed another layer of him: warm, articulate, effortlessly engaging. He had that approachable charisma that made viewers feel like they were listening to a friend rather than a performer. Those mid-2000s years showed a man finding his voice, leaning into the industry with both confidence and humility. By 2025, Charles Divins feels like a man who has grown into himself fully, a calmer, richer, more seasoned version of that bright young actor from the early 2000s. His appearance carries maturity now, a distinguished confidence, a thoughtful steadiness in his eyes, the quiet authority of someone who has lived, pivoted, and continued evolving. His work in television producing and directing has expanded his world, moving him from the front of the camera to the heart of storytelling. He no longer feels like the up-and-coming actor searching for space. He feels like a man who has created his own. There's a grounded ease in the way he speaks today, a sense that he's exactly where he needs to be, crafting a life that values balance, creativity, and purpose. ThEN. Adrian Lester's appearances on Girlfriends in the early 2000s carried a presence that was subtle yet unmistakably sophisticated. Even in those brief moments, he brought a level of poise and emotional intelligence that elevated every scene he touched. Back then, he was already carving out a name for himself far beyond American sitcoms, an accomplished British actor with deep theater roots, a classically trained performer whose talent felt both elegant and grounded. In those early years, Adrian had a calm intensity in his gaze, the kind that hinted at 1,000 unspoken thoughts. He carried himself with the assurance of an actor who knew exactly who he was, even while exploring new spaces in his career. There was an effortless charm in his smile, a depth in his voice, and a quiet authority in his presence. To see him on screen then was to witness a craftsman still in the rising glow of his prime. As the 2000s unfolded, Adrian Lester stepped further into the fullness of his artistry. His roles grew bigger, richer, more demanding. Hustle *. Stage productions, film performances that showcased the breathtaking range he had been cultivating for years. He was one of those actors who could shift from charismatic con artist to emotionally wounded hero to Shakespearean royalty without losing authenticity. The more he worked, the clearer it became that he wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing truth in storytelling. He exuded a rare combination of discipline and vulnerability, offering characters who were both captivating and deeply human. Off-screen, he carried a grounded calm, a warmth in interviews that revealed a thoughtful, introspective man who valued family, craft, and integrity above the noise of celebrity culture. Fast forward to 2025, and Adrian Lester stands as a seasoned master of his craft. Distinguished, mature, and profoundly respected across the industry. He is now in his mid-50s, but he wears time with the kind of grace that only a life of intention can create. His face shows the lines of experience, but also the softness of someone who has lived with purpose, loved deeply, and chosen roles that challenged and expanded him. There is a definite richness in his presence today, the posture of a man who has nothing left to prove, only stories left to tell. His work has moved fluidly between stage and screen, and his voice carries the wisdom of someone who has learned to navigate the industry without letting it shape his soul. He has become a mentor figure in many ways, an artist other actors look up to, a quiet pillar of excellence. 11. Robert Richard stepped into the early 2000s with a kind of youthful fire that made him instantly memorable anywhere he appeared, including his moments connected to the Girlfriends universe. Back then, he had that unmistakable boyish charm, bright smile, sharp eyes, and an energy that felt both playful and disciplined. He was one of those young actors who carried star potential on their shoulders without even trying. The early 2000s were a breakthrough season for him. One-on-One, Cousin Skeeter, guest roles across major series, and the confidence of someone whose talent spoke long before he opened his mouth. He had a charisma that blended innocence with ambition, making him stand out in a Hollywood that was overflowing with young faces trying to be seen. Robert, even then, felt different, focused, charismatic, and driven. As the years went on, Robert Richard proved that he wasn't just a childhood star. He was an actor with depth and emotional range. His transition into more mature roles in the mid-2000s and early 2010s showed a man stretching beyond the image of the playful teen heartthrob. His performances carried more weight, more edge, more vulnerability, more complexity. He began choosing roles that pushed him into darker, more layered territory, revealing a performer with real versatility. Off-screen, his evolution was just as striking. He grew more intentional about fitness, spirituality, business ventures, and mental centeredness. He carried himself with an almost meditative calm, the kind that comes from a man learning to balance fame, identity, and purpose. By 2025, Robert Richard has transformed into a man who radiates strength, discipline, and quiet confidence. His appearance has matured beautifully, still youthful, but with the sculpted seriousness of a man who has lived, learned, and rebuilt himself piece by piece. He is deeply invested in wellness, philanthropy, and entrepreneurial pursuits that reflect his values. There's a grounding in him now, a kind of inner steadiness that wasn't as visible in the fast-paced early years of his career. He speaks with more depth, moves with more intention, and navigates his craft with the awareness of someone who knows his power and has learned how to use it wisely. He still acts, but he also inspires through fitness, lifestyle projects, and the encouragement he offers younger performers who look up to him. 12. Genuine in the early 2000s was phenomenon, a storm of smooth vocals, hypnotic dance moves, and a presence that felt bigger than the stage itself. When he appeared within the Girlfriend's era, he did so as a star already burning brightly, carrying the magnetism that made him one of R&B's most defining voices. Back then, he was the embodiment of Y2K cool, the press waves, the open leather jackets, the quiet confidence wrapped in charm. He moved with the grace of someone born for performance and spoke with the sincerity of a man who had tasted both struggle and triumph. His music, especially hits like Pony, Differences, and So Anxious, wasn't just popular. It shaped an entire generation's sound. Seeing Genuine on TV, whether in a cameo or performance moment, felt like watching electricity take human form. As the decade unfolded, Genuine held tight to his crown as one of R&B's most soulful storytellers. He matured musically, shifting from a hyper-smooth sensuality of his early work into songs that carry more emotional weight, reflecting heartbreak, loss, and the complexities of life behind fame. The world saw glimpses of the man behind the star, a devoted father, a performer haunted by personal losses, a survivor fighting to stay grounded in an industry that never slows down. His interviews revealed a softness beneath the swagger, someone who had learned to navigate pain without letting it extinguish his fire. He continued performing, touring, collaborating, always finding ways to reconnect with the fans who had grown with him from the 90s into the new millennium. By 2025, Genuine stands as a man transformed, but still undeniably himself. Time has given him a different glow, less flashy, more grounded, a quiet strength where youthful bravado once lived. He's older now, but he carries his age with a raw honesty, embracing the journey rather than running from it. His performances today hold a sentimental reverence, like he's singing not just entertain, but to share pieces of a life lived loudly and vulnerably. There's a deeper weight in his voice, a richness shaped by decades of love, loss, reinvention, and healing. He isn't chasing charts anymore. He's cultivating legacy, connection, and authenticity. And in the age of nostalgia tours and revived R&B appreciation, Genuine has become a respected elder in the genre, still filling rooms with people who grew up on the sound. 13. Monica Calhoun entered the 2000s with a kind of quiet, luminous power that made her unforgettable in whatever role she stepped into. When she appeared in moments connected to the Girlfriend's era, she brought with her a warmth and subtlety that set her apart from louder performers of the time. In those early years, Monica had the serene beauty, soft eyes, expressive features, and a vulnerability she carried like an unspoken language. She wasn't just acting, she was feeling. You could sense in the way she tilted her head, the pauses she allowed herself, the way her voice dipped at the end of an emotional line. Her work in The Best Man and other films cemented her as one of the industry's most quietly powerful actresses. She wasn't chasing attention. She let intention do the talking. The 2000s Monica felt like a woman deeply connected to her craft, someone who approached every role with soul rather than spectacle. As the years moved forward, Monica Calhoun became an actress whose emotional depth only grew richer. She took roles that demanded vulnerability, wisdom, and a kind of emotional honesty that few performers could access so naturally. Whether she was portraying heartbreak, strength, or quiet resilience, she did it with a grace that made audiences feel like they were watching real life unfold. Off-screen, she carried herself with that same softness, private, calm, deeply committed to her family. Unlike many in Hollywood, she never felt pressure to live loudly or publicly. She remained grounded, choosing a life that balanced work with personal peace. Her interviews during that period show a woman who had learned to navigate fame without letting it consume her, someone who valued her inner world above Hollywood's spotlight. By 2025, Monica Calhoun stands as a woman whose maturity radiates from the inside out. She has aged into a kind of gentle strength, elegant, self-possessed, and glowing with the softness of someone who has lived intentionally. Her face now carries stories, laughter that once echoed in her 20s, tears from roles in real life, lessons learned quietly and powerfully. She is a mother, an artist, a woman who has weathered life complexities with dignity. Her presence today feels grounded, like someone who has outgrown the rush of Hollywood and found peace in choosing herself. She works when a role calls to her spirit, not when the industry demands it. There's a calmness in her eyes now, a reflective warmth that speaks to a woman who knows who she is and no longer needs the world's validation. 14. Landman Rucker entered the early 2000s with a presence that felt unmistakably warm, grounded, and quietly magnetic. When he appeared in the Girlfriends era, he brought with him the natural calm of a man who understood both his craft and his purpose. Back then, he had that classic leading man look, broad shoulders, gentle eyes, a soothing voice, and yet there was nothing arrogant or loud about him. He carried himself with humility, the kind that immediately made audiences lean in. In those early years, Landman radiated a certain steadiness, a mix of charm and sensitivity that made his characters believable. He wasn't playing at being sincere. He was sincere. Actors often chased the spotlight, but you could tell that he valued authenticity over fame. Even in brief appearances, he left behind a sense of emotional truth, like someone who brought real life onto the screen. As the decade went on, Landman Rucker grew into one of the most dependable and respected actors in black television and film. His roles across movies and dramas showed a man who could handle tenderness, moral dilemmas, heartbreak, passion, and wisdom with the same ease. The Hollywood machine didn't rush him into stardom. Instead, he built himself slowly, intentionally, and gracefully. Off-screen, he was deeply engaged in community work, men's development, and conversations about mental and emotional wholeness. While many performers leaned into celebrity, Landman leaned into purpose. There was a softness in the way he spoke, the way he carried himself. He seemed like someone who listened, someone who cared. The 2000 version of him was already a man aware of his responsibility beyond the role he played, and you could feel that consciousness growing year after year. By 2025, Landman Rucker has become the full embodiment of wisdom and masculine gentleness. Mature, reflective, powerful without being forceful. Time sits beautifully on him. His face now carries the depth of someone who has lived with intention, someone who has fought battles privately and emerged stronger, more centered, more compassionate. In his 50s, he has transitioned into roles that honor his depth, often playing fathers, mentors, spiritual anchors, and men wrestling with real inner conflicts. His voice is deeper, his presence even calmer, and his energy feels rooted, like a tree that has survived storms and still stands tall. Beyond acting, he has become a teacher, an advocate, a speaker, and a man who uses his influence to uplift communities, especially black families and young men finding their identity.